morning, Richard.
Good morning.
So, Richard, in your view, what are the game-changing shifts and opportunities arising across sustainability?
So I think what has been missed by some people, obviously not by many, but missed by some people is the fundamental change to energy systems, and it brings ramifications across the world in ways that I don't think any of us yet can really understand. So at its simplest, we're moving from an oil-based culture, oil and gas-based culture, which we've had for over 100 years. It has driven everything, whether it's military or civilian. It's driven just about everything. We've really not had anything else there apart from a little bit of nuclear as an energy system, in broad terms. So from a single source of energy to multiple sources that are very different, and those multiple sources offer different opportunities, offer different threats, and so wind, solar, hydro, they all work off different aspects of nature, but they're fundamentally different. And they're used at different times, and they come into operation at different times. And then you've got hydrogen, ammonia. You've got lots of different types. So we're going to go from a world where, broadly speaking, everything is done either through oil and gas or coal in terms of mines, but it's a fossil fuel, into lots of different types of renewable energy, some of which are not even got there yet. Sustainable aviation fuel, it's more expensive, but biofuels and things like that, these are very, very different to wind. So you've got a real variety. This is going to bring a very different world and brings massive opportunity, but it's going to be less singular. And that singularity has been a simplicity which we are going to lose. And for the next 10 to 15 years, I think we really need to understand, where are these going to go? What is going to propel a ship? What is going to propel an aircraft? What is going to propel a vehicle? What is going to propel an electricity supply? Is going to be different in each case. And even two different types of aircraft are likely to be propelled in different ways, with different energy solutions. That's a massive challenge. It brings geopolitical tectonic shifts, I would suggest, across the world, but it also is a massive opportunity.
And therefore, with that, what have you observed to be the critical pivots for or against the development and wide-scale use of renewable energy?
So I think I'll take a military context in this case. And I'm going to take a tank because it seems to be the thing that grabs everybody's attention. It's not something I've spent a lot of time thinking about, because it's not the center of where we're going, but it has grabbed people's attention. A Western European tank in the 21st century is about 70 tons, has 4 people in it, has a range of about 300 kilometers, and can be refueled in about 7 minutes. There is no renewable energy at the moment that is capable of doing all of that. Because the power to weight ratio of the fuel means that actually you simply can't use a renewable energy in order to be able to do that. Either because the reality is that there isn't a energy source that can be refueled in 7 minutes, or if it can be, it doesn't have the capability of moving a 70-ton vehicle across difficult ground. Oh, and by the way, that might be working in minus conditions, minus temperatures, which means that actually normal batteries are much less efficient. This is the problem. So the pivot is, how do we think differently in order to be able to deliver the same outcome? And in the case of a tank, the sort of What's the difference? The difference is you take the people out of the tank. If you take the people out of the tank and it becomes remote controlled, then actually you can reduce its size down to about 20 tons. If you reduce its size down to 20 tons, then actually renewable energies do start to be able to be used. And so the real pivot is in a mind shift of not we're going to do the same as we've always done, because that's the way we've been brought up for the last 100 years. It's what opportunities, if you're given a different energy source, what are the opportunities that are available to you? How would you come to the same outcome from a different base, different start base? That's really exciting, but it requires a mind shift of not, we've always done it this way, so we'll do it this way. Still, it's actually, what is the purpose of what we're trying to do? What is the outcome we want? How do we achieve that given the conditions we've got with the renewable energy sources that we will be able to use?
Interesting. And also from an MOD perspective, how is the MOD responding to the evolving ESG and regulatory sort of priorities around sustainability?
So I think the MOD has an opportunity to lead in this space as well. So it won't be a surprise that I believe the science. I believe that climate change is a threat to us, to our way of life. It's as much a threat as a way of life as traditional threats are and have been in the past. So we need to do something as a country, not just as an MOD, but as a country, to make sure that actually we reduce the amount of emissions that we produce in the world, and we become much more sustainable. That's a sort of a given for somebody like me. Of course it is. But actually, how can the MOD lead? So there's one particular, again, it was a bit of a sort of an idea I had, but it's something that has gathered moss, if you like, or gathered momentum. I thought, well, actually, we have a very large defense industrial base in this country. It's a very successful industry with lots of exports. It also produces a lot of emissions because it is, we in defense, if you like, are the last nationalized industry, or we were before COVID, and so we emit a lot, and our industry emits a lot, and so that's scope 3, if you like, emissions for those who understand that sort of language. How do I get at scope 3? I can't offset scope 3. I can't offset the millions of tons that come out of the defense industry. So I've got to persuade defense industry and arguably persuade all industry to do something different. So the idea I came up with is to turn around and say, you will not even get a contract. There's no point in even bidding for a contract with government unless you have a route to net zero. And it's got to be a viable route to net zero, which ultimately we could monitor and make sure that it is sensible. Well, our chief commercial officer really liked that, took it to the cabinet office, and I am told, and I have no evidence of it, but I'm told that the cabinet office will be announcing something similar to that in the next 6 months. So no contract will be made with government unless the person making that contract has a route to net zero. That's the sort of game changing that we can do as part of government, as part of as a department in the MOD, is make suggestions. The other idea is how do we make people understand the consequence of the carbon emissions of their product and the life cycle of their product. So how do we, and the way that I would phrase that is, how do we monetize carbon? It's not, this is not new, and it's certainly not my idea, but finding a way of monetizing carbon. So the idea I came up with, and it may or may not work, and it may or may not be taken forward, is if you like, to work out the carbon that is going to be emitted during the life cycle of the particular contract, whether it's a piece of equipment or a soft contract, sort of a facilities management sort of thing, and then say, okay, so put a price against that, which is a recognized price, and then say, okay, so that's going to be added to your bill as a company, because I need that money, thank you very much indeed, in order to be able to pay for the offset that I'm going to have to do as a result of the carbon that you're importing into my business.
Mm.
Now, through the contract. Now, if that becomes viable, then the end product of that is that each company is going to want to minimize the amount of carbon that they give to me, because they're going to be fined, if you like, less. Now, I've got all the language wrong there from a commercial perspective, and I'm sure that it won't work like that. And our commercial director is concerned about actually how to make that work. But this concept of we should not accept a carbon emission penalty from the contract that we place without some form of compensation for that, because we're going to have to deal with it. That becomes a really powerful concept, and I think the MOD can lead on that as well.
Mm. And I suppose with that, it's the behavioural changes therefore of organisations and that knock-on effect. What do you think are the most important behavioural changes that they will have to implement to have an impact, therefore?
So this is this is really interesting. Yesterday, I was opening some buildings on the MOD estate, on the MOD training estate, that are now net negative. They give back more energy than they take, and it's a combination of solar panels, incredibly sophisticated buildings, heat pumps, and recycling everything from the heat that comes from the showers, the heat that comes from the drying rooms, all the way to the insulation of the windows, and solar panels in the windows and things like that. Or that's the next sort of idea. Really exciting, and reducing the embedded carbon of the concrete pad that it sits on through using different materials. Very exciting. But when I spoke to the commander of that particular base, he turned around and said that he was doing all this because he passionately believed in it, but there was no incentive for him to do so. There was no financial reward for his base, obviously not for him personally, but for his base from doing so. So the savings that were made to the electricity bill weren't going to come to him. They were going to go to a central pot. And he said, if I didn't passionately believe in this, there'd be no point in me doing this whatsoever, because I get no benefit for my base from doing this. And so I think one of the biggest, and this may be an MOD specific, or it may be a government specific, but I doubt it. One of the really big lessons to learn from this is, how do you incentivize the right behaviors at the right level, the level at which it's going to have material effect, so that they can see the benefits of their ideas and the benefits of their opportunities that are local. And then recycle, if you like, that money that they get from that benefit into making it better and better and better. And so one of the big behavioral changes I think we need to make is an understanding of the delegation of financial authorities throughout an organization, whether it's the military or whatever, so that the people who really can make a difference have the incentive to do so, because they get the financial reward, if you like, for doing so. If we don't do that, we have 100,000 buildings in the MOD across our estate. I talk about the tyranny of volume. Actually, the volume of 100,000 buildings, my goodness, we've got to make 100,000 buildings more efficient. We've got to reduce the carbon emissions of 100,000 buildings. We've got to try and improve 100,000 buildings. It's too many for people to get their head around. So you have to do it at a level at which somebody can make a difference, and then actually pursue that and get the benefit from it. And we have one example of that down in Portsmouth, where the naval port, the commander of the naval port, keeps the entirety of the savings he makes from the investment he makes in sustainability. As a direct result, they are a more sustainable port than almost anything else that we've got on our estate, because he is constantly investing, because he gets the benefit. So it's about incentivization.
Interesting. And do you think that with COVID, there has been any change in focus at all?
I think COVID has shown us that we can do things differently. I think so. We have a target set on us by government to reduce our internal air travel, so domestic air travel. We've singularly failed to do that for the last 10 years or however long we've had this target, because we are spread across the whole country and we move people across the country for very good legitimate reasons, but also for meetings. And I think what COVID has shown us with the use of Zoom and so on, that actually we can be more efficient by not having to travel everywhere. And so we've met our air targets, our domestic air targets last year for the first time. And we've now realized that actually this is a much more sensible, it's cheaper, it's a much more sensible way of doing it. COVID has also allowed us opportunity to, if you like, to expand people's education and imagination. So we've gone from 8,000 laptops to 60,000 laptops out with our people, because everybody's realizing that there's opportunity here. Now that's as a direct result of COVID, but what that will do is it'll reduce our emissions, but it'll also allow more imagination to come to the fore. And I think this innovation and imagination, which is what I always look for in my subordinates, that's where we should be going.
Which itself has then accelerated different behaviours, hasn't it, all the way down
Correct.
to each
Correct.
individual. Yes, interesting.
And of course, this isn't many people think in sort of absolutes. It's not an all or nothing. Of course, we still need soldiers to move around. We still need our ships to go to sea. You know, we haven't changed our basic purpose in the MOD, for example, but the background of behaviors has become much more efficient, and I think that's something which benefits the environment, but allows for this imaginative thinking to take place.
Richard, thank you so much for spending time with us today and for this really interesting and insightful interview. A real pleasure talking to you today, Richard.